Ladies and gentlemen, imagine for a moment that your life is a canvas, and every interaction, every relationship paints a stroke on that canvas. Some strokes are bold and colorful, others are faint and hesitant. Now imagine stepping back and seeing the masterpiece you're creating, not with the stories of the past, but with the decisions you make today. Today we're diving into a profound idea: why no contact destroys avoidance. This isn't just about relationships or psychology. It's about the intricate dance of energy and emotion that shapes who we are. It's about how avoidance, a shield many of us carry to protect our hearts, can crumble under the power of silence and space, revealing the deeper truth of our own transformation. As Dr. Dispenza would say, your personality creates your personal reality. And if that's true, then the patterns of avoidance that once felt like safety may actually be the barriers to our most authentic, connected selves. So let's uncover why stepping away, why choosing no contact is not just a boundary for others, but a catalyst for the avoidant to face their own evolution. Get ready to explore not just the mind, but the energy that flows through every choice we make. The truth is, transformation begins where the familiar ends. And today, we're stepping into the unknown. Are you ready? Let's begin. Silence is one of the most powerful forces we can encounter, yet it is often underestimated. In the context of relationships, particularly with avoidant individuals, silence can serve as a profound catalyst for transformation. Avoidants are often driven by a deep-seated fear of vulnerability, using strategies such as emotional withdrawal or deflection to protect themselves from perceived threats of closeness. These strategies can become deeply ingrained, creating a cycle where avoidance is both a defense mechanism and a prison. When the dynamic of silence is introduced through no contact, it disrupts these patterns and forces the avoidant individual to face what they have long been evading. In many cases, avoidants thrive in environments where they can keep their emotional distance. They rely on distractions, whether external or internal, to avoid confronting the vulnerability they fear. Constant interaction with others provides them with opportunities to maintain control over their emotional landscape. However, when no contact is introduced, the noise of those distractions disappears. In any case, they are left with the echo of their own thoughts and feelings, a space they might not have entered willingly. This silence can be unsettling, even jarring, because it removes the external stimuli that allow them to avoid self-reflection. The absence of communication creates a void, and in that void there is no one to project onto or blame. Without the ability to use others as emotional mirrors or shields, avoidants are compelled to turn inward. They begin to encounter emotions and fears they have long suppressed. This confrontation can be profoundly uncomfortable, as it dismantles the carefully constructed walls that have kept them safe, but isolated. It is in this space of silence that the mind begins to process what has been buried. Fears of rejection, inadequacy, or being unworthy of love. These emotions are often the driving force behind avoidance, yet they are rarely acknowledged because doing so feels too vulnerable. The power of silence lies in its ability to create a mirror for the avoidant to see themselves clearly. When communication ceases, the avoidant individual loses the ability to externalize their emotional experiences. Instead, they're left to wrestle with their own inner world. This process is not immediate. It takes time for the initial discomfort to give way to deeper introspection. Initially, they might feel anger, confusion, or even relief. But as the silence persists, those surface-level reactions often give way to deeper realizations about their behavior, patterns, and fears. In the stillness of no contact, avoidants are also forced to reckon with the consequences of their actions, the relationships they have withdrawn from, the opportunities for connection they have forfeited. All of these come into sharper focus when there is no external dialogue to distract from the reality of their choices. This awareness is not necessarily a conscious process at first. It may manifest as a vague sense of unease or restlessness. Over time, however, this discomfort can evolve into a clearer understanding of the emotional gaps they have been avoiding. Silence also shifts the power dynamics within the avoidance mind, where once they may have felt in control by maintaining distance, they now experience a lack of control, as the silence forces them to engage with the very things they sought to avoid. This lack of control is a critical turning point. It creates an opening for transformation because it dismantles the illusion that avoidance offers safety. In the absence of external validation or distraction, the avoidant is left to confront the reality that their avoidance is not serving them as they might have believed. No contact introduces a new reality, one where the avoidant must either face their fears or remain stuck in the discomfort of avoidance. This forced introspection is not about punishment. It is about creating the conditions for growth. Silence acts as a mirror, a teacher, and a challenge, guiding the avoidant individual toward a deeper understanding of themselves and their emotional needs. When avoidants are faced with no contact, they are inevitably brought face to face with the emotional void they have spent much of their lives avoiding. This void represents the space within themselves where unprocessed emotions, unresolved fears, and suppressed vulnerabilities reside. For many avoidants, their avoidance strategies have become second nature, serving as a shield against the pain and uncertainty of emotional closeness. However, when contact is removed and they are left without the familiar dynamics of interaction, the carefully constructed defenses begin to falter, and the void they have been avoiding becomes impossible to ignore. The void is not merely an absence of interaction. It is the emotional space that avoidance seeks to fill with distractions, excuses, or distance. When these coping mechanisms are no longer viable due to the silence of no contact, the avoidant must confront the emptiness that lies beneath. This process can be deeply uncomfortable, as the void often holds the unresolved wounds of the past, memories of rejection, moments of vulnerability that were met with hurt or fears of inadequacy. These experiences are not consciously processed in the day-to-day life of an avoidant, as their energy is typically focused on keeping those feelings at bay. However, in the absence of external stimuli, these buried emotions rise to the surface, demanding attention. Together with the stress responds create the moment by which ultimately trauma becomes trust, and trust. The emotional void can feel like a destabilizing force for avoidants, as it challenges their sense of control. Their habitual way of navigating relationships through detachment, withdrawal, or emotional suppression no longer provides relief or safety. Instead, the void creates a sense of vulnerability that they are ill-equipped to handle. This vulnerability, while uncomfortable, is a critical aspect of the avoidance growth. It forces them to acknowledge their emotional landscape, even if they initially resist doing so. The absence of contact acts as a mirror, reflecting back the internal state they have been avoiding. As avoidants begin to confront the void, they may experience a range of emotions that they are unaccustomed to processing. Loneliness, sadness, anger, and even fear can emerge, often in intense and unfiltered ways. These emotions are not new, they have always existed beneath the surface, but the dynamics of avoidance allowed them to remain hidden. Now, in the stillness created by no contact, these feelings become unavoidable. They seem to become unavoidable. This confrontation can feel overwhelming, as avoidants are often not practiced in sitting with their emotions or understanding their origins. Their instinct might be to retreat further, as seeking new distractions or ways to avoid the discomfort. However, the longer the silence persists, the harder it becomes to maintain these defenses. Avoid also brings into focus the avoidant's unmet needs and desires, which are often suppressed beneath their fear of vulnerability. In the absence of contact, they may begin to recognize the connections they long for, the intimacy they secretly crave, and the emotional nourishment they have been denying themselves. This realization is not always immediate, as it is often buried beneath layers of self-protection and denial. However, as they sit with the discomfort of the void, these truths gradually become more apparent. The silence of no contact creates the conditions for these realizations to emerge, as it removes the distractions that would normally keep them at bay. The experience of facing the void can also challenge the avoidant's self-perception. Many avoidants view themselves as self-sufficient and emotionally independent, taking pride in their ability to navigate life without relying too heavily on others. However, in the stillness of no contact, they may begin to see the ways in which this self-perception is a defense mechanism rather than a reflection of true strength. The void reveals the ways in which their avoidance has limited their emotional growth and their ability to form meaningful connections. It challenges the narrative they have constructed about themselves and forces them to consider a different way of being. It draws them closer. Ultimately, the process of facing the void is a journey into the avoidant's inner world. It is a confrontation with the parts of themselves they have long ignored, denied, or feared. Avoidance in relationships often operates as a deeply ingrained pattern, a habitual response to the discomfort of vulnerability and emotional intimacy. For avoidance, these patterns can feel like second nature, providing a sense of safety and control in navigating their connections with others. However, these same patterns also create barriers to genuine emotional growth and intimacy. When the dynamic of no contact is introduced, it interrupts these habitual behaviors in a way that can be both jarring and transformative. This disruption forces avoidance to confront the cycle they have been perpetuating, opening the door to new possibilities for change and self-awareness. Avoidants often rely on predictable behaviors to maintain emotional distance. These behaviors might include withdrawing from difficult conversations, minimizing their emotional responses, or focusing on external distractions to avoid addressing deeper feelings. These strategies are not inherently malicious. They are protective mechanisms developed over time to guard against the perceived risks of emotional closeness. However, they also create a cycle where avoidance becomes both the problem and the solution, trapping the individual in a loop that reinforces their fear of vulnerability. When no contact is implemented, this cycle is broken. The absence of interaction removes the external cues and dynamics that typically trigger avoidant behaviors. Without the ability to retreat from a partner's emotional expressions or deflect intimate moments, the avoidant is left to face the internal mechanisms driving their behavior. This interruption creates a space for reflection, even if it is not immediately recognized or welcomed. Initially, the avoidant may experience feelings of relief, as the removal of contact eliminates the immediate pressure to engage emotionally. However, over time, the silence begins to expose the underlying patterns that have been at play. The interruption of habitual behaviors often leads to discomfort, as the avoidant is forced to confront the reality of their choices. Without the ability to rely on their usual strategies, they may begin to feel a sense of loss or unease that they cannot easily explain. This discomfort is a critical part of the process, as it signals that the familiar cycle of avoidance is no longer providing the same sense of security. Instead, the avoidant is left with the raw experience of their emotions, unfiltered by the coping mechanisms they have relied on in the past. The breaking of the cycle also creates an opportunity for self-awareness. In the absence of contact, the avoidant has the chance to reflect on their patterns and the impact these patterns have had on their relationships. This reflection is not always immediate, as avoidants may initially resist acknowledging their role in the dynamics they have created. However, as the silence persists, they are often confronted with the consequences of their avoidance, missed opportunities for connection, unresolved conflicts, and the emotional distance that has come to define their interactions with others. This awareness, while uncomfortable, is a necessary step toward growth. No contact also disrupts the avoidance sense of control, which is often a key component of their avoidance strategies. By maintaining emotional distance, avoidants create a sense of control over their interactions, shielding themselves from the unpredictability of vulnerability. However, when no contact is implemented, this sense of control is taken away. The avoidant is no longer in a position to dictate the terms of the relationship or manage their emotional exposure. This loss of control can feel destabilizing, but it also creates an opening for new ways of relating to themselves and others. Without the ability to rely on their usual strategies, the avoidant is challenged to explore different approaches to their emotions and relationships. As the cycle of avoidance is interrupted, the avoidant is also given the chance to reevaluate their emotional needs. The absence of contact often brings these needs into sharper focus, highlighting the ways in which avoidance has prevented them from experiencing the connection and intimacy they truly desire. This reevaluation is not always a conscious process, as it is often buried beneath layers of self-protection and denial. However, as the silence persists, the avoidant may begin to recognize the limitations of their patterns and the ways in which they have been holding themselves back. Discomfort is often seen as something to be avoided, a sign that something is wrong or needs to be fixed. For avoidants, this belief is particularly strong, as their entire emotional strategy revolves around sidestepping situations that evoke vulnerability, pain, or uncertainty. However, discomfort is not inherently negative. It is a signal, a guidepost, pointing toward areas that require attention and growth. When no contact is introduced, it removes the external dynamics that allow avoidance to escape from discomfort, forcing them to confront it head on. This process, while challenging, is a necessary step in healing and breaking free from the limitations of avoidance. So while we still fight to be heard and safe, avoidants often develop an aversion to discomfort early in life, typically as a result of experiences where vulnerability led to rejection, hurt, or disappointment. To cope, they learn to suppress or avoid emotions that felt too intense or unmanageable. This aversion becomes a deeply ingrained habit, shaping how they navigate relationships and interact with their own inner world. By avoiding discomfort, they maintain a sense of control and safety, but this comes at the cost of emotional intimacy and personal growth. The patterns of avoidance become so automatic that the avoidant may not even realize the extent to which they are disconnecting from themselves and others. No contact disrupts this dynamic by removing the usual outlets for avoidance. The silence and space created by the absence of interaction strip away the distractions and defenses that normally keep discomfort at bay. Without the ability to deflect, withdraw, or minimize, the avoidant is left to sit with their emotions in their rawest form. This can feel deeply unsettling, as they are not accustomed to engaging with their feelings in this way. The initial reaction is often resistance, a desire to find new distractions or rationalize the discomfort away. However, as time passes, the avoidant is forced to reckon with the emotions that have surfaced. That provides the context of what we're dealing with here. The discomfort that arises in the absence of contact is not random. It is the result of unresolved emotions and unmet needs coming to the forefront. These emotions might include loneliness, sadness, regret, or even anger. For avoidants, these feelings can feel overwhelming because they lack the tools and practice to process them effectively. However, it is precisely this discomfort that holds the key to their healing. Self-reliance and control necessary to maintain the relationship with someone. This is why it matters so much. By sitting with these emotions rather than running from them, the avoidant begins to build emotional resilience. They learn that discomfort is not something to be feared, but something to be explored and understood. In this process, the avoidant also begins to develop a new relationship with their emotions. Instead of seeing them as threats, they start to recognize them as valuable sources of information. Discomfort, in particular, can reveal areas where they are out of alignment with their true needs and desires. For example, the loneliness they feel in the absence of contact might highlight their deep longing for connection, a need they have been denying or suppressing. Similarly, the regret they experience might point to opportunities for growth and change. By paying attention to these signals, the avoidant gains insights into themselves that were previously obscured by their avoidance strategies. And so the more that avoidance practices themselves and learn to accept themselves, the more they are inspired. The experience of sitting with discomfort also challenges the avoidance sense of control. Avoidance creates the illusion of control by allowing the individual to dictate the terms of their emotional engagement. However, when no contact is introduced, this illusion is shattered. The emotions that surface in the absence of interaction are unpredictable and often intense, forcing the avoidant to confront the reality that they cannot control their feelings as easily as they might have thought. This loss of control can feel destabilizing, but it also creates an opening for growth. It encourages the avoidant to let go of their need for control and embrace the uncertainty and vulnerability that come with engaging authentically with their emotions. Through this process, the avoidant begins to build emotional tolerance, the capacity to sit with uncomfortable feelings without immediately seeking to escape or suppress them. This tolerance is a crucial skill for navigating relationships and life in general, as it allows the individual to face challenges and uncertainties with greater resilience and self-awarenesses. A relationship without tolerance, which tends to lead to misunderstanding, frustration, and complacency, the discomfort they experience during no contact becomes a kind of training ground, teaching them how to navigate the complexities of their inner world in a healthier and more constructive way. Energy dynamics play a crucial role in human relationships, often operating beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Every interaction involves an exchange of energy, shaped by the emotions, intentions, and behaviors of those involved. For avoidance, these energy dynamics are often defined by their need to withdraw and protect themselves, creating an imbalance in the flow of emotional energy. When no contact is introduced, this energetic imbalance shifts dramatically. The absence of external interaction forces the avoidant to redirect their focus inward, initiating a process of self-awareness and transformation that would not occur in the presence of their usual relational dynamics. This causes the avoidant to feel like they do not alone, feelings of fragility and dependence on others. In relationships, avoidants often engage in a push and pull pattern that allows them to maintain emotional distance while still benefiting from the connection. This dynamic creates an energetic exchange where the avoidant takes in just enough energy from the relationship to feel stable, but avoids giving back in ways that require vulnerability. This imbalance often leaves the other party feeling drained or unfulfilled, while allowing the avoidant to maintain their sense of control and emotional safety. These patterns are not inherently malicious. They are coping mechanisms developed over time to protect against perceived threats to emotional security. When no contact is initiated, this flow of energy is interrupted. The avoidant is no longer able to draw on the emotional energy of the other person to sustain their sense of balance. This absence creates a vacuum, leaving the avoidant with only their own energy to navigate. Initially, this shift can feel destabilizing, as the avoidant is forced to confront the emotional void they have been trying to fill through external relationships. The silence and stillness of no contact remove the distractions and external stimuli that typically allow them to avoid this confrontation, creating a space where deeper truths begin to surface. Um, the 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 absence of interaction also forces the avoidant to confront their own energetic patterns. Without the dynamic of the relationship to focus on, they are left with their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This inward focus can be uncomfortable as it brings to light the ways in which they have been managing their energy to avoid vulnerability and intimacy. For example, they may begin to notice the emotional walls they have built or the ways in which they have deflected genuine connection. This awareness is not always immediate. It often unfolds gradually as the avoidant sits with the silence and begins to process their inner world. As the avoidant becomes more aware of their energetic patterns, they also start to recognize the impact these patterns have had on their relationships. They may begin to see how their avoidance has created imbalances, leaving their partners feeling unseen or undervalued. This recognition can be painful, as it challenges the narrative they have constructed about themselves and their role in relationships. However, it is also a crucial step in their growth, as it opens the door to new ways of relating that are more balanced and authentic. No contact also shifts the energetic focus from external relationships to the avoidance internal world. This inward focus allows them to access parts of themselves that have been neglected or suppressed. The energy that was once directed toward maintaining distance or managing interactions is now available for self-reflection and emotional processing. This shift creates an opportunity for the avoidant to develop a deeper understanding of their own needs, desires, and fears. It also allows them to explore new ways of managing their energy that do not rely on avoidance or withdrawal. The energetic shift created by no contact also has the potential to awaken a sense of longing or desire for connection in the avoidant. As they sit with the silence and stillness, they may begin to feel the absence of the relational energy they once relied on. This absence can bring to light the ways in which they have been denying themselves the intimacy and connection they truly crave. So this realization is not always comfortable, as it challenges their belief that avoidance is the best way to stay safe. However, it also creates an opening for change, as the avoidant begins to see the value of engaging more authentically with themselves and others. Through this process, the avoidant may also develop a greater appreciation for the energy dynamics of relationships. They begin to understand that genuine connection requires a balance of giving and receiving, a willingness to be vulnerable, and an openness to emotional exchange. The silence of no contact serves as a teacher, showing them the limitations of their avoidance strategies and the potential for growth and transformation that exists when they are willing to engage more fully with their emotions and relationships. So the development of how we interact with ourselves and authenticity is a cornerstone of meaningful human connection. Yet for avoidance, it often feels like a risky and unattainable ideal. The fear of vulnerability, rejection, or loss of control frequently drives avoidants to suppress their true emotions and needs, presenting only what feels safe or acceptable to the world. This tendency creates a disconnection not only from others, but also from themselves. When no contact is introduced, it serves as a powerful catalyst for dismantling these defensive layers and revealing the avoidant's authentic self. In the silence and stillness of no contact, avoidants are given the rare opportunity to confront their true feelings, motivations, and desires without the influence of external dynamics. For many avoidants, authenticity is sacrificed in favor of self-protection. They learn early on that being emotionally open can lead to pain or rejection, and as a result, they develop strategies to shield themselves. These strategies might include minimizing their emotions, avoiding difficult conversations, or retreating when they feel exposed. Over time, these behaviors become so automatic that the avoidant may lose touch with their authentic self, mistaking their protective facade for their true identity. This disconnection creates a sense of internal conflict, as their suppressed desires and emotions often resurface in ways that feel confusing or overwhelming. No contact disrupts this pattern by removing the external triggers that typically reinforce the avoidant's defensive behaviors. In the absence of interaction, the avoidant is left with only their internal world to navigate. This silence can feel unsettling at first, as it exposes the gap between their outward behavior and their inner truth. Without the need to manage or control a relationship dynamic, they are free to explore their emotions and motivations more honestly. This process is not always comfortable, as it often involves confronting aspects of themselves that they have been avoiding or denying. However, it is through this discomfort that authenticity begins to emerge. The stillness of no contact creates a space for self-reflection, allowing avoidants to examine their patterns and choices with greater clarity. They may start to notice the ways in which they have been compromising their authenticity to maintain a sense of control or avoid conflict. For example, they might realize that they have been suppressing their need for connection out of fear of vulnerability, or that they have been prioritizing emotional safety over genuine intimacy. These realizations can be challenging to face, as they often reveal the ways in which avoidance has limited their emotional growth and fulfillment. However, they also provide a foundation for change, as the avoidant begins to see the value of living more authentically. No contact also allows avoidants to reconnect with their suppressed emotions and desires. In the absence of external distractions, they are free to explore what they truly want and need without the influence of fear or judgment. This process often brings to light emotions that have been buried for years, such as longing, sadness, or even joy. By sitting with these emotions and allowing themselves to feel them fully, avoidants begin to develop a deeper understanding of their own emotional landscape. This understanding is a crucial step in reclaiming their authenticity, as it allows them to align their actions and choices with their true feelings and values. Now, as avoidants reconnect with their authentic selves, they also begin to see the ways in which authenticity can enhance their relationships. They may start to recognize that genuine connection is only possible when both parties are willing to be open and vulnerable. This realization challenges the avoidant's belief that emotional distance is necessary for safety, showing them that authenticity can actually create a deeper sense of trust and intimacy. By embracing their true selves, avoidants open the door to relationships that are more fulfilling and meaningful, both for themselves and for others. The process of reclaiming authenticity through no contact also involves letting go of the need for perfection or